Well, here's another thing that'll make you angry. For the first time since 2008, the UK is offering 0 down mortgages to help renters and first-time home buyers get into the housing market. Do we forget what happened, people?
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds.
Yeah, I think that's the part that we're going to cut out, and we will start pressing play from here. For all the public to see. So let's go, Tom Storey.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Tom Storey Show. This is your weekly real estate roundup podcast every single Sunday. I want to thank you for being back here once again. If you are watching on YouTube, please make sure to like this video. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We are approaching 2,000 subscribers, and we would like to do it before our first birthday, which is actually coming up in June of this year. If you're listening on the audio platforms, just want to say thank you. I hope you're having an amazing day, and make sure to leave us a review. On to today's guest. Now, I've been prying at this guy for months, maybe even years, begging him to come on the podcast. And after
not years, Tom, we're not even a year old.
Before I even knew we were going to do it, I was like, I need to get Mike on. And he kept saying, I don't know. And then finally, we've convinced him. Mike Kearns is here. Mike runs the Kearns Group up in Thornbury. He is also a top 1% realtor with Royal Lepage in Canada, runs an awesome business, and one of my best friends in the industry. And this episode is going to be a lot of fun because I would say on a weekly basis, you call people even if you have nothing really to talk about. You two are my guys that I do that with on a weekly basis. So I feel like this episode is just going to be like a fun catch up. Mike, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks. Excited to be here. I'm glad my manager was finally able to find a spot for you guys.
Yeah, I kept just trying to get past the gatekeeper, but we appreciate you being here. So, Mike, a little bit of background. We'll get into your specific market, but how long in real estate, areas that you service, and then we'll get into what's going on these days.
Yeah. So I've been selling real estate for about 14 years now. Came from the golf business before that. So my areas of focus are really Blue Mountains, the Thornbury area. That's we have kind of a big piece of a small pie in this segment of the market. But we also service a bunch of the surrounding areas. So there's a bunch of little communities that are all kind of within a 15K radius. So Blue Mountains, Thornbury, we do quite a bit in Meaford, which is where I grew up. Go out into the Beaver Valley, service like a lot of Beaver Valley Ski Club members and stuff with recreational properties there. And then we touch into Collingwood as well, but that's about as far west as we would go. So, but yeah, our core business is right here on the shore of Georgian Bay in the Blue Mountains.
And I guess for Steve, it's comparable to Whistler, maybe not the hills and everything, but kind of the same vibe. It's recreational vacation type property.
Yeah, it's like, I guess it's like Whistler, miniature Whistler, I guess. Like
Whistler Light.
Whistler Light. It's not, I certainly wouldn't call it Blue Mountain. It's more of a blue escarpment, blue hill. But the amenities are pretty much the same outside of the size of the mountain. It's just a little bit different animal. Skiing is the skiing in the area is more of like a social pursuit. It's great for the kids and gets you out in the winter, but it's certainly not big mountain skiing, that's for sure. But the vibe is great, like the village and our unique thing with all the private ski clubs, which you don't really find anywhere else in the world. So it's a great spot to live, great spot to raise a family, and certainly it's in high demand with people transitioning from the city, taking some of that equity out and buying something awesome here where they have kind of a 4-season lifestyle.
And the people coming from the city, are these the younger generation going, Toronto's too expensive, I'm going to buy outside the city? Or is this more the downsizing, I've retired and I'm going to move out there?
Yeah. So my my most common client would be that person looking to retire up here or is transitioning into retirement. So maybe they've got another 3 to 5 years left working in the city. They're going to buy now with the intention of moving up here full time within the next 3 to 5. That's most of my clientele. Certainly during COVID, we did have a lot of people that were, more in my demographic that were able to work remotely and move their families up here. But the reality, I mean, it depends on the specific pocket that you're in. But our real estate's not cheap here, so it's unless you're maybe coming from Rosedale, you're not. Right. You're not going to put a bunch of cash in your pocket by moving up here necessarily. Certainly, like in the Blue Mountains and Thornbury. So it's anybody that's making that move. It's really a lifestyle choice. It's not so much I'm going to change my life because now I have $1 million in cash in the bank. So
right, it's a lateral move or even an up move in terms of pricing. Even maybe if you're coming from the city, based on because it's not just that they're big properties, but they're fairly large lots as well, right?
Yeah, it can be. I mean, it's quite a mixed bag, and all the communities are very different. That's why, like, when we dig into the stats and stuff on like like a board level, you really have to be careful with what you pull out of there because they all function very differently. Like even inventory, days on market, and the price ranges are all over the place from Collingwood to Meaford, and they're all kind of within, a 25-minute drive, but there's a lot of different options. So
now, one thing that I noticed is that small town feel where I'm from Toronto. Steve's from a smaller place than Toronto, but I don't think he gets like stopped on the street by everyone. Steve, I went out for dinner with Mike in Thornbury.
Sorry.
And like it was every single person was like, "Hey Mike, hey Mike, hey Mike, hey Mike." Like every single person knew who he was. It was actually weird if someone like didn't come up and know him personally. And is that just what the feel is like living there? Or was that because you've been there your whole life, or is it really that small town feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty small community, Thornbury specifically, and that's that's one of the great value propositions of someone like coming from the city that wasn't necessarily entrenched here already. Is it, it's pretty easy to become part of it, right? So like it's the same faces that you generally see all the time. Certainly changed a little bit over COVID. Like there's a lot of people that just had no ties here and came up. So, but yeah, it's definitely still a small town feel, which is which is great.
So small town feel, anyway. But big town prices. So let's chat about where the pricing's at. I know you mentioned before it's kind of all over the place because there's all these different areas. But if you had to go like, let's just rank based on how much things cost. Is it like Thornbury, Collingwood, then Meaford? Like what? How does that go?
Yeah. So Collingwood is certainly like close. Like Thornbury, I mean, over the last 10 years has generally had the highest average price, like right in the Thornbury pocket. But Collingwood definitely picked up a lot of steam during COVID because it's it has more to offer from a family perspective. Like there's just more stuff going on there. So when we saw that exodus from the city of younger people, that kind of drove demand up there, and we saw prices rise quite a bit. So I'd say like downtown Collingwood and like downtown Thornbury are pretty comparable on price, but it's just you've got these little pockets that command big money, right? That can skew the numbers a little bit,
right?
So yeah,
because I know like you've got a ton of very exclusive high-end listings, whether they're on the water in Thornbury and in those areas. We've noticed this pickup in the market from the beginning of 2023 that even luxury stuff in Toronto is moving very, very quickly again. Are you seeing that as well? Or is it still like, you list something $3 million plus in your area, it's still going to take a few months to find a buyer willing to spend that money out there?
Yeah. So it's interesting. So one of the things that like Collingwood has that Thornbury and the surrounding area doesn't is like we don't have a ton of new development here that's not on the luxury side. So like most of the listings that we have right now are newer build stuff, luxury price points. Whereas Collingwood has more, traditional subdivisions for families and stuff, right? So that's one of the big differences. As far as the luxury market goes, I mean, it's certainly softened up quite a bit since 2022. Like mid pandemic, that stuff was, you could sell a $3 million house just about as quickly as you could sell $1 million house. That's changed, and that I think the main driver of like the softening of the luxury segment overall has been generally that stuff is discretionary real estate, right? So like people that are looking at most of the homes that I have listed, they want to buy, they want to move to Thornbury, but they don't have to, right? Like they still have their place in Toronto. They're probably intending to keep it for a while anyway. So they're not feeling a lot of pressure to make quick decisions right now. So as long as they don't feel like prices are running away from them, they're taking their sweet time to make a decision, even if they find something that checks 10 out of 10 boxes. Like we're getting on some of our luxury properties, like we're getting the same buyer that'll come back and like look at it 3 or 4 times before they make a decision. So I think it just comes down to discretionary versus family. Like where we're seeing the market start to heat up again is people that are actually downsizing, upsizing family stuff. So like we're seeing in Collingwood, for example, if you live like one of the popular communities there is Georgian Meadows, which is a subdivision kind of built in the 90s. Like we'll see stuff in there that gets priced right, selling multiple offers. But we're not seeing that with most of the market now. And I think, although what's happening in the city helps drive our business, right? Because the media cycle's caught up in what's going on in Toronto, right? So whenever I talk to a client, they're like, oh, wow, like the market's amazing, like what's going on? But it's very different here, right? Like we don't have the supply demand imbalance here. Like we're getting up to, depending on the community, anywhere from 4 to 6 months of inventory. So it's just a different animal, right? I mean, if you get a house that's really in a great location, then yeah, there's some high demand for that. But generally speaking, we've got a lot more supply than you do in Toronto. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, like it's not so much a like the demand is running away in Toronto. It's just that your supply is like going the other way, right?
Nothing's coming to the market.
This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by Masters Academy, presented by Richard Robbins International, happening July 5 and 6 at the Hyatt Regency in downtown Vancouver. Masters Academy is the premier real estate training event in Canada. It's a 2-day in-person live training event to help real estate professionals learn cutting-edge business development strategies directly from top-producing agents flying in from all across the country. Masters Academy is returning to Vancouver for the first time since 2019. And you don't want to miss its unique learning formats of small giants, lightning rounds, and genius interviews that this year include AI strategies, marketing ideas for 2023, relationship mastery, and so many more topics that will fuel your business now and for years to come. Not only am I looking forward to seeing Tom in person, but also many previous guests from this show will be in attendance. And possibly this year's biggest attraction, the marketing guru Joe Polish will be presenting on the main stage, and that alone is worth the price of admission. So come learn with Tom and I from the masters of the Canadian real estate industry at Masters Academy, Vancouver, July 5th and 6th by reserving your spot using the link in the description below. And listeners of the Tom Storey Show save $200 off of their tickets. Yes, just by using our link in the show notes to reserve your spot. This event has helped me grow my own business and Tom's as well. From previously just making a living to creating a real estate business that provides me with not only the income, but also the work-life balance that I had only dreamed of previously. So buy your tickets today using the link down below and make sure you click on the Tom Show logo to save $200. And get ready to master your real estate career by learning from Richard Robbins himself, Canada's #1 real estate trainer at Masters Academy July 5 and 6 here in Vancouver. So fly in, book a room if you need to, and come connect with other agents from all over the country and grow your referral network at the same time. And of course, use our link below for $200 off of your ticket. And now, back to the podcast.
Yeah, like in Toronto, we're still, and I think, Steve, you're the same, right? Like historically low. We're at like between 20 and 40-year lows on inventory coming out every single month. Are you starting to see that pick up now for you as well, Steve?
For sure. So things are finally starting to turn around. So there's two ways to look at inventory. One is actual number of active listings on the market. And then the other one is just months of inventory consumption rates.
Right.
So your months of inventory consumption rates, Tom, is probably like two months.
It's like 2.2 right now.
So let's say you're 2 months, and then Mike's is between 4 and 6 somewhere. Ours crept down to 3. But the actual, like I keep an eye on the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board numbers, and you can go all asset class and just look how many active listings there are. And that number has been right around 4,000 since almost January 15th. So it hasn't been going up like it should. Now, in the last 2 weeks, it has started to go up. We've added 10% in the last 2 weeks. So we're starting to now see that kind of bloat, which, well, it's not even a bloat. We still need to be at 6,000 before we, come to a decent, healthy number in the first place. So we are starting to see that now, and that usually caps off sometime in June and July and then drops again. But it never increased. It never really increased from the beginning of the year. And that's how we've seen it. Like we had the same amount of active listings on the market in January when we were at 8 months supply. And now we've got very close to the same amount of listings on the market right now at 3 months supply. So there's just a lot more selling.
You know what's happening? So this is what Richard Robbins had explained to us a few years ago when it went crazy. And it's like, okay, you can look at amount of inventory versus the absorption rate of the actual inventory, right? And right now, it's not that we have no inventory, but we have very fast inventory. It's being absorbed very fast, where end of last year, we still didn't have a lot of actual inventory on the market, but it was being absorbed very slowly. So we had slow inventory. It seems like that's all that's changed here. It's just like the numbers haven't ticked up, and hopefully now that sellers are hearing this kind of good news, because it's been bad news for 12 months in a row, that they're now going like, okay, now I'm actually going to come to the market. Mike, is that something that, especially in those high-end price points or the luxury stuff you're putting out, are your sellers going like, well, should we even go now? Should we wait till the fall? What's the best time, right?
Yeah. Well, I think there's certainly a lot of confusion in the market. Like people just kind of have no idea what's going on. So we are getting a lot of calls. Like I'd say that, we definitely saw some price recovery in April. Like, that average prices kind of crept up and kind of cut into the losses that we had before. And we are seeing like, we're like, it's a little hit and miss. Like we're seeing some luxury stuff come out and, it seems like they're testing the market a bit with price and it sells right away. Right. And then you see another one on the same street come up and, seemingly priced the same way. And it just sits. Right. So it's kind of luck of the draw on the luxury segment right now. So as far as like new inventory goes, like we're seeing our inventory levels continue to build. Like that months of inventory is slowly creeping up, but new listings are staying pretty flat.
Right.
So like we're not seeing a lot of people like wanting to take advantage. Like unless something happens like in the neighborhood that like piques somebody's interest. Like we have an outlier sale and then I get a bunch of like, there was one place that sold here in Thornbury a couple of weeks ago, and they had 18 showings in a few days, which is tons for us.
Yeah,
sold for $150,000 over asking, and then I got like 10 calls from other clients, past clients in the neighborhood, all saying, "Well, is it time to go?" So
right, they're all waiting for the good news to then come to the market, right?
Yeah, but I do like I am feeling like. Yeah, certainly more optimistic about what we're going to see now for the rest of May and June than maybe I was. And it gets back to that all that positive news that comes out of Toronto, even though it's not necessarily directly correlated here, it does help with the sentiment, right? So it gets people feeling better about their real estate. And when it comes to the luxury segment, it certainly helps a guy make a decision if he feels like his Toronto house is up 300K. It makes him more likely to pull the trigger on his next place here, right? So,
Yeah,
Tom, I just ran the numbers here real quick, and I was just looking at year over year for the Fraser Valley board. We're at 10% more sales this month and 14% less listings.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right. So that's the real calculation you look at. Now, both of those are going the other way month over month, but year over year. Obviously, last year May was not one of our better months, right? Like it was kind of the beginning of the downslide.
That's interesting. So, Mike, I know we've talked about to start this podcast, like, you're very involved and tuned in on the high end stuff. But if I'm listening to this and I'm like, okay, I've heard of Thornbury because I drink their alcoholic cider. And that was my understanding of Thornbury before I went up there for the first time. But it's this great little community. Can I buy a house under $1 million? Like, does that exist, or do I have to go to Meaford? Like, what's that like?
Yeah, probably Meaford. I mean, for a single family home in the Blue Mountains and specifically in Thornbury, I mean, we're looking at an average sale price that's in the 1.5 range. So, like you can put, like, we have a couple little communities that kind of are connected to Thornbury, like Clarksburg. You can get a decent family home in Clarksburg for $1 million on the low to maybe like between $1 million and 1.3 get you into family house there. But we certainly see, like, Meaford is in transition, like it's definitely changing over there too. So there's quite a value proposition for retirees or families that need a little bit more space, because it is probably, you're going to save 20-30% on buying there. It's 10 minutes up the street, right? Like it's not far, but it's a very different community, right? Like, so and it's just that much further from the ski clubs and stuff, which is why there's not a lot of recreational like Four Season people, maybe waterfront guys, but if you want to ski, you probably don't want to tack that 10-15 minute drive onto your day when you're going back and forth jogging kids to the ski club. So,
and I think similar to Steve's market, because you're not the core of things, that during the pandemic, your market very much went up in value, like tons of price growth, and then came down, not as much as it went up necessarily, but still, if you can now go back to 2019, what was the average? Not to put you on the spot, I know you love math questions on the spot.
I hope you got your numbers.
Wait a second, that wasn't one of the questions that was sent to me last night.
Even though they've come down from the peak, it's like if you go back to 2019, what were you selling homes for in 2019 in Thornbury and Meaford? Was it significantly lower than it is now? Is it still way up from then?
Oh, I mean, as much as half.
Wow.
2018, I mean, we bought our place, the place that we're currently in 2019, and at that time, I mean, it was a benchmark sale in the community, and we've almost doubled in value really since 2019, right? So, where we're exactly at right now is a little hard to put a pin in, but it's way up, right? Like the demand for places up here just went through the roof through COVID, because it introduced a buying group that wasn't here previously. Is the audio lagging?
No, you guys.
You're good.
No, you're good.
We get this. Okay. We get this quite a bit once in a while. But the master file will turn out fine.
It's usually just me and Steve's brains lagging is the issue on this podcast.
It slows down so we can catch up and understand what they're saying.
Gotcha.
Yeah, okay. It's a podcasting host trick.
Yeah. So where I was going with that is that, like, prior to the pandemic, it was rare that I would have a buyer client in the area here that didn't have some kind of past connection to the area.
Right.
Like they grew up skiing up here. Their parents used to come up. But during the pandemic and post-pandemic here, like the amount of calls that I get from people just calling me up and saying, "Hey, Mike, like, we want to move to Thornbury or Collingwood, and this is kind of house that we want." And then I talk a little bit about how the communities are very different, and is there one that you prefer over the other? And then like so many times I get now, well, I don't know, all my friends are there. I've never been there, but we want to buy, right? So, but that guy did not exist. We didn't just get random like people deciding they wanted to move to Thornbury, but it's just everybody's here. Like there's no fear of missing out in the city anymore because all their friends are here.
Right.
And that's what it used to be. Like if you moved up here with your family in 2018 and all your buddies are in the city having fun, like a lot of those people came for a year and they were like, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be. Like I romanticized it a bit and then they went back, right? Nobody's going back anymore, right? And the ones that are even getting forced to go back by work, they're hanging on with everything they can to stay here, whether it be, they go to the city 2 to 3 days a week and then they keep their family up here. So
we're seeing that a little bit as well, where people are like, okay, maybe dad or mom is the one that has the job in the city. And I mean, not where we are, but I'm even seeing that from different cities outside of Vancouver, right? Like there's people that are buying in Surrey and commuting into Seattle. So they're going 2.5 hours down the freeway for 3 days. Dad goes and rents a condo for 3 days a week and then comes back for the lifestyle.
Yeah.
Well,
it's also that sounds like a good lifestyle, actually.
There's 3 dads on the call. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
It's got to be a lot harder though. Like if they moved up to Thornbury with kids and they put the kids in school, it's not like you're just leaving, like those are probably where if you don't have kids, it's probably a little bit easier to go back to the city. But once you set your roots, your kids make friends, they join sports leagues. It's like, you're pretty much there.
Yeah. I mean, this is what keeps us like in Thornbury specifically is that we've got such an amazing elementary school here. And it's almost like a private school, right? Like but it doesn't cost anything. So when you really do the math of all the expense outside of your housing in the city, there's quite a savings with a lot of that stuff, right?
So when somebody goes, when you're getting these city dwellers coming in and infecting your nice little small town, what type of, everybody says, well, okay, small town, it's still $1.3 million. What kind of financing is that? Like, are they coming out and having 20% down, or are they coming out with substantial down?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't get involved on the financing side that often anymore. I mean, most of the buyers that I'm working with are, in that 50 to 65 range, and they're probably not financing because they have to. It's just a investment decision, right? How much do I want to leverage this and not pull from my investments or whatever? So I don't get involved with that, but I think that most of the time, but I think it's just a discretionary call most of the time. It's not.
So they're not like scraping in. These are people like, do I want a mortgage on this based on how I want to have my finances run versus do I want to cash out certain investments, pay capital gains on that, and then buy it all cash?
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, certainly, like it's not that we don't work with people that don't have gobs of money, but like certainly, we work with a lot of young families and stuff as well. And the financing is obviously a different situation there. I think, the locals and the families up until now hadn't been involved in the real estate game for the last 3 years. Like COVID knocked them out, right?
Yeah.
Like they couldn't, like most people that are just ordinary like say you've got a couple school teachers that live here, they couldn't afford to get involved in that game, right? Because you had to go buy a house unconditionally and then just roll the dice with yours, right? So we are getting back to some of like the lower price points where somebody will take a sale of purchaser's property condition, and you can, or you can negotiate like a really long close with the possibility of advancing it if you move faster. So now we're starting to see some of the families start to come out of the woodwork again, because it really, like, the local business, probably represented like just longtime Thornbury Meaford families. It was about half of my business up until COVID. And then the last 3 years, it's been probably like an 85-15 split on that, right? Locals just weren't going anywhere.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. So I've got some breaking news that I want to announce here. It's the Sports Center. Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun. RBC has announced that the housing correction is over in Canada. And I want to talk about that because just as recent as December of last year, they said specifically the GTA was in a buyer's market. It was in the buyer's favor. Now they're saying the sellers are in the driving seat once again. Do we agree with this? Do we disagree? What do you think, Mike?
What does Royal Lepage and Remax say?
Probably something pretty similar.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're out of the woods, and it'll be very interesting to see what the Bank of Canada does from this point forward. I think there's a lot of people that just have full confidence that they're done, and I think it's going to send some shock waves if they start ratcheting up the rates again. So especially coming into like a summer market like where we are, where things tend to soften up a little bit anyway. So no, I don't think we're out of the woods. Do I think it's a dead cat bounce, like we were talking about a month ago? I don't think it's necessarily that either, but I don't think we're out of the woods. It's just like it's just too unpredictable right now,
it's
right?
Funny
like
that you use that term. It's funny that you use that term because on my channel I just did a video and it's exactly the same term. We are not out of the woods, right? That report comes out on the exact day that the inflation report comes out, and inflation goes up. So like maybe that article was written a day early. It's now the big thing. What I'm seeing there though is like, okay, the correction is over. That doesn't mean what people want to think it means necessarily. Like the downturn for sure I'm just looking at the numbers right now. Average price bottomed in November and benchmark price bottomed in January. So now for 5 months straight or 6 months or 7 months, we've seen prices going back up. So that does mean the correction at that point is over. I think, Tom, that's what you said when you covered the exact same bloody article as me on your channel, you bastard.
But posted it first, to be clear.
Yeah. But like, how long does it have to recover? But now that inflation goes up and interest rates could be and likely will be going up, and that's why people like Tom should have taken a.
Do you really think they're going up?
Yes.
You think Bank of Canada is going to do in 2023 going to do another 25-point hike at some point moving forward?
Yes.
Really?
I'll bet you. Who wants to bet me?
Well, I mean, I hope they don't for my own personal situation.
Mike, what do you think?
Neither Tom or I can afford to bet you on that with my variable rate and So,
but like, look when you look at the difference, real quick. Let me finish my thought. Like now we've seen, let's just say, since November here in my market, we've seen $210,000 detached increase in price. So what everybody hears when the correction's not over is that we're going to go back below $200,000 ago. And there's a really good chance that a quarter point stops the market and maybe it comes back 50 grand. But is it going to come back that 20% or 15% again? That's where I think the correction probably is over. So we're probably going to see a much more regulated kind of bounce or I don't want to bounce is the wrong name to use here, but
a dribble.
It's just going to slow down a lot. And if rates go up, it will stop. I think that's what it will happen.
I think it just depends on how long people can hang on for, right? Like this extension of amortizations and stuff, which is really just bailed people out. Like we should have seen distress inventory coming to the market all over the place by now. But it's not. So that if they continue to raise the rate, I mean, it's just trying to predict when that inventory starts to come to market, right? So because it should have been here already, but the banks and the government they're not allowing that to run a natural course, right? So but I don't, I'm certainly not an expert when it comes to inflation and those things. So it's pretty interesting. But I guess the Bank of Canada and the Fed will probably keep being pretty hawkish on that until they break something again, right? Like so, and that's when they'll stop, right? They'll push it as far until something gives, and then. But I don't know. I think the Canada versus the US is different because of where we're at on the real estate scene, right? Like I think they're probably the main conversation that the Bank of Canada has in those meetings is if we push it a little too far, what's going to happen? Whereas like in the US, it's just not the same kind of debt load on their real estate, right? So
on the homeowners,
on the homeowners,
businesses, it's tougher for them. Like here,
yeah.
I think that's actually one of the biggest things is they see house prices shoot right back up with whatever we had. We went from 1/4 point to 4.5 right now.
Yeah.
And then, oh, by the way, prices increased again. Let's call it 10% at least right now over the last couple of months. So they're going, because that's what's going to drive that inflation number up, right? Mm-hmm. House prices, big part of it, and then fuel prices. So there's a really good chance that's everybody going, okay, they stopped increasing. These are the new payments. Let's off to the races again. That's what's actually causing inflation to rise, which is why they will crush it. I think we see a 1/4 point. If we see another month, when is the next announcement? I don't even know. If we see another tick up in inflation, for sure, you're getting at least a 25 basis point.
I believe it's in June. But if they go up 25 points, so all the people with the extended amortizations were the variable rate, the trigger rate people that they just kept pushing it out and made them just cover the interest, right? Those are the people in that scenario anyways. If 25 points happens again, what's it going to change? They
just lose more equity each payment.
I it sucks for them, but like, I mean, for inventory coming to the market, is that going to be the thing that breaks it, that brings the inventory to the market? Because any active buyer right now that's buying today probably isn't taking a variable. So it's not impacting them. So understandably on the inflation side of things, I get why they would do it, but purely on the housing market, does 25 points do anything at this point?
Well, I think it's the signal. I don't think 25 points. I think it's, at least here. So when you consider my average client, he's not worried about his 4.5 or 5% mortgage rate, right? Like it comes down to what is a rising rate going to do to prices, right? So when we saw them put a pause in, that really lifted our luxury segment, because it was a signal to those buyers that, prices are probably going to stabilize now, right? So I guess that's the difference between my average clientele and then maybe if I was buying, like, your condo guys, like young guys trying to get into the market, like, 1% interest makes a huge difference to their affordability.
Tons.
Yeah. For us, it's mostly like, because it's discretionary, you know what? Like if they're going to keep jacking rates, I'm going to wait till next year to buy, because I think the prices are going to drop further.
And if you're buying with large sums of cash, you're actually truly taking advantage on the decreases in prices. Where if you're buying with a higher mortgage rate, your monthly payments not changed. I know I keep bringing this up on the podcast,
it has no effect at all, because on this call, I assume from the comment you made, 2 out of 3 Canadians are on variable rate, right? But the new people buying in, so you guys may be affected, but the new people buying in are still buying right now under $1 million at 479, over $1 million at 509, let's say. And those numbers aren't going to change because the higher the interest rate goes right now, there's a really good chance that the 5-year fixed rate money doesn't go up. Right. And that's why I think crazy people like Tom Storey should be locking in.
So when I bought my house beginning of this year, I was very skeptical. I took a 1-year fixed rate, which at the time and still at this point in time looked pretty good because I got it under 5% for a 1 year. But now, as we are approaching halfway through this year, I'm thinking, oh, maybe I should have taken a 3-year. Maybe I should have listened to Steve for once.
Do you remember what it was?
The 3-year? I'd have to look. I have an email that laid it out for me. I would think it was like 5. It was either 5.19 or 5.29.
Really? I wonder right now if you shot for a blend and extend, I wonder what number you could get.
Maybe I'll make a call after this podcast today.
Yeah, you probably you've got a few days, right, with all the bond yield stuff in the last couple days. So apparently now's the time to lock in a long-term rate. You got that 4 days.
I think that's very, very much possible. But the big deal there, I think, is for the insured mortgages that are at like 479. Right. So anybody over $1 million, you're kind of hooped. You're going to end up with the higher one anyway. But those people there are people right now on insurable product that are at 6.35, let's say 6.39 is a respectable variable rate right now. They could now flip, if they qualify, I guess is the big thing. They could now flip into a 5-year fixed rate at 4.79. Why wouldn't you do that? That's a full 1.5% less for 5 years. So I'm going to, what if rates go down? Tom Storey is about to say. First of all, rates are not going down.
Ever?
That's my bet. Not right now. But let's say, for instance,
in 5 years?
Okay, yes. Let's say they go down in 3 years from now. Let's say they go down in 2 years from now. You have 2 more years at a full 1.5% more during that period of time. So now they have to drop at least 2.5%, let's say 3% to make up for the difference. Lock in now. Everyone listening to this, lock in if you have. This is not financial advice.
I think there's a different level of risk aversion in this group between the three of us.
There is definitely. I am 100% on board with. I want to know where my payment is, so I know what to expect. And
you're also you're being negative because you're locked in.
I'm locked in at 279. I'm a genius.
Yeah.
By mistake. It was a fluke.
Yeah.
275. Sorry.
Okay. So what we figured out is the correction of prices may be over in terms of them going down to 10 to 15%, but the correction overall in terms of what's happening, that's still a big question mark.
Well, Mike, has yours bottomed? Has your market bottomed, do you feel, in price, or do you think prices are going to continue to drop?
Well, I think we saw a little bit of price recovery in April here. We'll see what the May stats look like, but if I had to make a prediction for the rest of 2023 here, at least in our local market, I think we'll stay fairly flat from here. I think now April, May recovery, and then I think barring any kind of like crazy business with the Bank of Canada, that we're going to see a pretty flat year on price from here out in 2020.
Okay, now let's go travel to Tom, where Tom and my market is very similar. Tom, if you had to bet right now from the bottom, which was probably January for you guys?
Yeah. December.
If you had to bet from the bottom, if interest rates even increase 50 points from now, are we going to go past the bottom that we saw in January in the next 12 months?
You mean in terms of prices going back down again?
The average price or benchmark price or whatever you want to use has to go below January.
No. No, because the same reason we said before, I don't think it's impacting current buyers, and because of the extended amortizations, whether we like that or not, it's not going to bring enough inventory to make a dent in the prices.
Yeah. And then
Here's the
I want to make this one point. So RBC probably right. The correction is over until RBC's next article. The next correction is here. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think what's different now versus last spring is people's fear of mortgage rates. So I think that was the entire news site, like front page of the newspaper for the first time in certainly in my lifetime that anyone even talked about it, right? So it was everything people were talking about around real estate, right? And I think people are they're over it. They're not they're not logging onto their computer to listen to Tip Macklem make his announcement. Like it's just so if it goes up a quarter point, yes, that will impact some people, but I don't think there's not the same fear sentiment around it that there was before. It's just, oh yeah, they're still doing that. Oh, okay, well that's
Totally. And the bank rate announcement thing became a thing when they cut them at the beginning of the pandemic. So it was like emergency announcement, we're cutting rates, all this stuff. And then I guess people kind of thought about it for a while, but yeah, you're right. It became entertainment.
Well, it's so weird. Like I mean, like maybe it's just I'm old now, and that's like things that we find interesting to talk about. But I can't remember. Like I bought my first house probably like 20 years ago, and we got a rate, felt okay. I never talked to anybody like about it. It wasn't a conversation piece at the dinner table. It was about the same as what interest rates are now. But it's weird. It's just like, I guess I think the media just got a hold of it and it was something that people were clicking on. Right. So, yeah.
I think also with the increases of prices that we've seen, that housing in general in Canada is such a controversial topic because of the increases in price and who can afford it and who can't afford it. And people are just like super passionate about it. They're either pissed off or they're loving it if they own it, right? So you're on either side of it. There's two sides kind of yelling at each other, and they both feel like they're right.
Yeah, like I mean, as many happy people as there are right now that things are improving. I mean, there's a lot of people that I think are really disappointed because they finally thought they had their window of opportunity to get into the market, and now like with a snap of a finger, it's gone again, right? That window of taking advantage of desperate sellers is over again, right? So
yeah. Sellers are back in the driver's seat as per RBC's most recent report. I wanted to talk about something that Steve's experiencing in his market now, and there's rumblings that it could be coming to Ontario, and that is the cooling off period on resale properties. Now, friend of the show, previous guest of the show, Tim Hudak, recently wrote an op-ed in the Toronto Star specifically about this, saying that this was a bad idea. I think he did a good job breaking it down. Steve, now that you are 5 months into this, do you still feel like you felt at the beginning, or is it not that big of a deal now and whatever, and it just is what it is?
It confuses people, honestly. It really confuses people. I think a better way to have done it would have been, does this apply or does this not apply to the contract? So what we're having to do now is we have to apply it to every contract, even if they have conditions.
Right.
So it's very confusing. It's stupid. It's legislation written by somebody that doesn't understand how a transaction works. So that's another problem. Is it scary? No, I haven't seen it come into play. I have started to hear of people paying the rescission fees and walking away. I have kind of heard of that. I'm going to tell you one thing that people don't think about it, which is, or they would never think about unless you're the agent and the seller involved in the transaction. It's very anticlimactic for everyone involved. It increases anxiety and it removes the joy of
You got the house, so
buying
you sold,
and selling. Yeah, 100%.
yeah.
It
Making that
removes
call to your clients. Yeah.
Yeah, which is a lot of like people feel really good when they sell a house or they feel really good when they buy a house. And that's all now. You bought the house. Maybe.
Yeah.
You know what? We're going to wait. Let's just wait. If you don't hear from me until 11:59 p.m. 3 days from now,
They should have
that's good
made
news.
it like a 6 p.m. wrap up time so people aren't up till midnight looking at their phones.
Or not had in evenings and weekends is stupid. You can tell a government moron wrote that, right? Oh, no evenings and weekends and holidays. I'm going to point out to this too. They've taken out holidays and then they gave a list of holidays that are like acceptable or non-acceptable, because obviously Valentine's Day is not one of those.
I'm sure that went over well.
Well, here, you know what these idiots did? You know, a absolute bunch of morons wrote this. They didn't put Truth and Reconciliation Day as one of the vacation days.
Oof.
What
Wow.
a bunch of idiots.
Wow.
Right? So like just out of touch with today's world. So I don't know if it's been added or not added, but it's just like, who is making these stupid rules? And that rule is going to be coming to you guys eventually because you guys are just copycats.
Yeah. It's interesting to, I think 12 hours is long enough, right? Like one night to sleep on your purchase is enough for you to wake up the next morning and say, oh, fuck, like, what did I do? Right. And we've seen it before, like even get it, like we were in a multiple offer situation last weekend, right? Two parties, two offers, exactly the same, like literally identical. So we sent them back and gave them until the next morning to resubmit. Right. And lo and behold, the other offer was like, you know what, like we decided that was a bad idea, so we're out, right? Like in most cases, I would say 90% of the time, the buyer realizes he's doing something crazy within 12 hours. We don't need 3-4 days to make that decision, because it really like has such a negative impact on the seller, right? Like that, because we've all had that, right? Where we've got a property in high demand. We get an offer, even if it's under condition, right? Like to get that kind of energy around the listing again, if you have to go back to market, it's impossible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in most cases anyway. So I think it's all of the policies that they make are terrible. I mean, like we get back to like the blind bidding thing, right? Like it's not doing anything. Like if anything, it might end up driving prices up more, right? Like
I think
it will.
It will.
Yeah. It's
and
just
interesting note to that. Somebody that we know that hopefully we can have on the show soon is involved in a company that does that, and which I think is actually possibly the real solution. We're going to try and figure that out soon. But there are companies, and some of their pitches are, this will maximize dollars for the seller.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's their whole thing. This has nothing to do with affordability.
Totally.
So all we want is fairness. And I'm okay with that. You want fairness? Cool. Cooling off period has to go both ways. Because how many times have you had a seller think about it the next day and go, I'm not sure I want to do that anymore. So why is it we're fair for the buyers, but not for the sellers? They're taxpayers and homeowners as well. So it's just, now I'm not of that mindset. My thought is, you are a human being, your capacity to contract. If you can't play with the big boys, beat it, right? Like you should be able to know what you're getting into. And if you choose not to know what you're getting into, that's on you. I'm not here to babysit. Can you guys, I just want to interrupt. Can you guys, don't say anything.
Steve is fired up. Steve is fired up.
I just realized,
yeah.
Can you guys hear this? Don't say it because it's for like audio. Can you guys hear that? Okay, cool. I've been doing that the whole time and I didn't realize. But if you're listening on audio, go to YouTube at the whatever minute mark this is and find out what this is.
What a great plug to get them over to the YouTube. We get double views. I love it, Steve.
You're going to get double views. Yeah. This is going to be the most viewed of all time.
This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by the YouTube for Real Estate video course. Are you interested in creating an engaging, value-driven YouTube channel to help educate your client base on real estate in your market, as well as introduce a new revenue stream to your business? Perhaps you've already created a YouTube channel, but are struggling to gain viewership and the subscribers you are looking for. The YouTube for Real Estate course will provide you with proven tips and strategies on how to create and cultivate an engaging YouTube channel, as well as how to optimize your channel, resulting in higher viewership, subscribers, and yes, deals. But that's not it. I implemented YouTube in my business in early 2021, and it has easily been the best marketing source for meeting new clients that I have ever had in my business, period. Better than expensive geo-farming, internet marketing, and open houses combined. And now it even rivals my repeat and referral business. If you would like to learn all the tips and tricks for meeting new clients using YouTube, simply go to Video Course Login or click the link in the description below and sign up for the YouTube for Real Estate course today. And learn a year's worth of my painstaking research of learning how to use YouTube for real estate in just a few hours by taking the YouTube for Real Estate course. So go to videocourselogin.com right now and use the promo code TOMSHOW at checkout. Again, that's videocourselogin.com or simply use the link below.
All right. I told Mike, when he came on the show, he had to say something controversial, right? We really had to, we can't just have Steve fired up. So I wanted to bring up I wanted to bring up one other topic that has divided opinion on the industry. We talked about this on a Me and Steve episode, but since then I've been more vocal about it and had a lot of response to it. Is this exclusive?
Immigration? Are we going to type?
No.
Speaking of views going down, we just got demonetized. Thank you.
Well, hey, if you want to share something, go for it. But what I wanted to talk about was the exclusive listing policy, where basically, I don't know how big that is in your market, but Mike, a lot of people, in fact, some people that both me and you know very, very well, were openly being like, this is very stupid. This is bad for sellers. This is not a good thing. And Steve's one of those people as well. And then the other half was like, this is, as Steve loves, this is the fair thing to do. This is what we should do. It should be fair for everybody. Does this change your business up there? Does the high-end stuff trade off market, or is it all hitting MLS anyways?
Yeah, I mean, not in good conscience anymore, right? Like there was a time, because I do so much business in a small pocket here that kind of pre-COVID, we probably, 20% of our listings, we would sell off market at a time, right? Where, we had a buyer and a seller, but that was at a time when, I could accurately estimate within a couple percent what a property was going to sell for, right? And even now that the market's softened a little bit, it's still a bit unpredictable. Like I have a hard time, like unless I have a seller that's like, just get me out of here and I don't want to deal with it. I don't care if I risk losing a little extra money. That's about the only time that I would do it. In most cases, like sellers come to me and say that they want to do it that way, and I talk them out of it. Like, I mean, why would you expose your house only to my small group of clients relative to the overall market, right? It's just, I just don't think it's a great thing. Now, from a seller perspective, when we get into some of those areas like you were alluding to there, I mean, you get into central Toronto, hot areas, like, I mean, we certainly see outcomes that on the exclusive side that probably wouldn't have happened if they were put to market, right? Mm-hmm. It's just like that guy is willing to pay more just to not run the risk of playing with other people, right? So, I guess I believe in your right to do that as a seller. I don't think that should be taken away. And maybe if I had like something ultra luxury and I just really wanted to control like who is going through there, but yeah, unless you're in really specific markets, I don't think it's good for the seller. So,
but 82% of the people that voted on this do believe it's good for the industry. Now, I know Steve is
also 100% of people that voted were the industry.
Yeah. I mean, I believe in, I think sellers should be able to choose what they want to do, right? So if they want to list it exclusive, I mean, I'm not going to deny them that. I just would want them to understand the risks of taking that route, right? But
So they could have done a disclosure, a mandatory disclosure about, hey, sign a piece of paperwork that says you will likely get more money if you go to market, right? And then if they sign off on that, they can say, okay, you know what, I don't want to go to market because of privacy, because of all of these different things. But if the industry really truly cared about fairness, they would do another thing that BC's done, which is remove dual agency. Just take it out of there. But they didn't want to do that because that wouldn't be good for the industry, right? So they've done all things that are beneficial for the industry. And people may not like it. I was shocked by the amount of agents that are like, nope, no matter what, this is a good thing because now I get the option to take my buyer to that listing. And I understand that argument. But that doesn't mean that you have to take away the seller's right to sell their property the way they choose. And that's essentially what they've done.
Yeah. I mean, I feel somewhere in the middle on it. It's not going to impact me or my business at all. But I do understand both sides. And like this, just like cooling off, just like all the other things that have come in, they've come in basically to say to the buyers that we want to make this as fair as possible to you. Now, that's because the buyers have been the ones complaining over the last 15 years, which I understand because housing prices went crazy, right? They're the ones being like, what the hell's going on here? Where the sellers weren't speaking out. They weren't saying that this was an issue to them being taken away. So their voice was never heard because they really had nothing to complain about for the last decade. So I understand why these have come in and why we voted on them, but don't necessarily agree on all aspects of it. I don't know.
I could go on for hours, man. I can go on for you want me to like I'm angry. I'm angry that continuously property owners get their rights removed slowly. That's what I'm angry about.
Yeah. Well, here's another thing that'll make you angry, but I actually want Mike's opinion on it. For the first time since 2008, the UK is offering 0 down mortgages to help renters and first-time home buyers get into the housing market. Do we forget what happened, people? So it's happening in the UK first, you know, I don't know. Mike, thoughts on that?
So I was listening to the Looney Hour last night and I wasn't paying close attention to it, but don't we have a program like that in Canada right now? Something along that line where the government is fronting some level of down payment,
but it's not 0 down. You still got to come up with a certain percentage.
Yeah. So it was interesting because they talked about it, and apparently since its inception a couple years ago, they've had 401 Canadians take advantage of it.
And no one used because it caps the purchase price, and it
was funny. It was just so they were joking about how many employees were hired to put that program into place, and 401 people in 3 years took advantage. So I don't know. I mean, they do things pretty weird over there because I believe over in the UK, can't you a deal is not a deal until the day that it closes, right? We talk about a cooling off period. You basically have the entire pending term to just say, no, I don't want it, right? So I guess we for all the complaining we do, it could be a lot worse.
Well, they actually have the other side of it. The seller, if I'm not, and I sold no real estate there, so I don't know for sure, but the seller has the right to accept a higher offer all the way to closing.
Yeah.
So
fair on both sides, at least.
So they can go, okay, but all the way to closing. I don't know what they call it. The freaking, it's some weird, sounds like spelunking or something. I don't know what it's called, but it's this weird term where, you know what? If I can get a better offer before closing, screw you, get out of here. So I do think our system is better when people come to an agreement to everybody believes, hey, this is the way that we should be able to enter into contracts without fairness over here, fairness over there. Just the way we've been doing it was absolutely fine. 2008 though, are we back there with 0 down? I don't want to see 0 down come back here.
Well, that's now the conversation. If it starts working there and renters are openly saying, this is great, I got into the market, and then people start bringing it up here, I don't think it would be a good thing either. I think it'd be terrifying.
Yeah. I get that. Kind of brings me to what, and maybe we don't have time to talk about it, but all the new zoning stuff that that got passed in Toronto, like how big is that? How big is that going to be for you, Tom?
I think it's a great thing the city did. I think it took a lot of people doing like I didn't actually think this was going to pass. I thought a lot of people would be against this. I think the vote was like 18-7 or something. So, it was pretty much supported. I think it's great. I think the fact that you can have 4 dwelling units on your property and anywhere now you can do that in the city is amazing. But you still have to get applications to do it. You still got to have the money to build it, and how many people are actually going to do this, because it's still not going to be cheap. That's still going to cause the issue. And just like always, the city is saying to the people that already own the real estate, okay, we're allowing you to do it now, but it's on you guys to bring the new inventory to the market. We allowed you to do it. It's not on us anymore. So go nuts, but it's going to cost you money.
So how do you think that's going to impact prices on, like you've got a house in Toronto that would have typically been a builder, buys it, rips it down, and builds a new build. Are we going to see a different type of buyer now? Are we going to see prices get driven way up because of the income potential?
Well, it's going to depend, because if you look at the condo space, developers would rather build 4 1-bedroom condos and sell them off equally instead of selling, one large 3-bedroom with the same amount of space, right? Now, with this new zoning, if you do a 4-plex where you can even convert it into like a small condo and sell them individually, it's just going to be based on if the numbers are making sense to the developer and where the buyers are coming from. But on the current single family homes that people are now allowed to do this, well, how many people are actually going to do it? And then, but I think more than anything, not really on the sales side, but it'll bring more rental inventory to the market. And I think that will be a good thing. But
eventually,
is it going to be enough inventory not to just be automatically absorbed and then we move on? Yeah, I don't know. Long term, it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Let me put my tinfoil hat on, though. Have you guys heard of the underused housing tax by the Canadian federal government?
No, I have not.
Yeah, snuck that one in, didn't they? So there is something called an underused housing tax, of which the government then gets to determine if you are using your property to its full potential. And if you are not, they will tax you. So if there's a chance that you're leaving a property vacant, or maybe you only have one house or one dwelling on your lot in the city of Toronto and you can zone 4, we're going to tax you as 4. There is a possibility, now that's not happening, but this has happened in Vancouver. So Vancouver had empty homes tax.
All right.
And what they did is they went down, I believe it was West 4th or maybe Broadway, and they upzoned the whole thing. They're all 1-story, 2-story. Now you're allowed 6 to 12. Then there was a little restaurant that was allowed 5 more stories above it, and they started getting charged vacancy tax on 5 stories of air.
Well, sounds like a good way to bring in revenue to the city, which they can obviously use.
Great way to crush a business. And by the way, the guy owned the building and is a restaurant owner. It's a Mexican. He's making tacos, right? Mexican restaurant. And now he's getting charged as if he owns an apartment building in property tax.
You know what? I'm going to the Government of Canada's website right after this, and I'm just going to email anyone I can find on there to come on here and address Steve's concerns. Because
I really want to talk about digital currency with Steve.
Let's do it. Let's do it right now.
Let's do it. Mike, we got 5 more minutes. Let's do it. Let's do it.
What do you feel, digital currency?
Well, I think that there's no stopping it. Like it's just going to be pushed through. I worry about government control over contracts and that kind of stuff. But I guess the government always want more power, not less power, right? And it makes me nervous from things like will they just make a decision to say, like right now we have carbon taxes and stuff they're supposed to disincent us from from driving our cars around too much, that kind of stuff. But for the government to just be able to say, you know what, you drove your car too much last week. You can't
Yep.
buy fuel this week, right? So I just think that, it's just back to the real estate thing, right? Like we're just going to have the wrong people making the decisions for us, and important decisions, right? Like, I mean, like it is just, it's a frightening thing. I think 80% of Canadians will just be like, oh well, I already use my iPhone to pay for stuff, so it's just the government doing it, right?
Yep.
But I think it's I think it's a little worrying, like when you see how like easy it was, like during that whole Ottawa fiasco and stuff, even without a digital currency, to just say, hey, you guys can't have money anymore. Like, can you imagine if it was as simple as just hitting a button, right? Like, so
100%. And it's going to be an
just
easy way to take your tax money, right? It's going to be an easy way to collect anything they want to collect, and shut off the tap when they want to shut off the tap. They will have the ability to do that. And
I think maybe the savior will be our banks, right? This is just say, like, what's that going to leave us, right? Like, if somebody can borrow their money just through the government through digital currency with no risk, right? Versus going to the bank. But so maybe those guys will have enough lobby power to kind of keep the reins on this. But
well, if they do go to digital currency though, and they do go to a trackable dollar, which is what it is, right? It's, I can tell you where you can and can't spend your money, and I can tell you I can tell what you're spending your money on, who with, all that stuff. If they do go to that, that opens up other things like Bitcoin and Ethereum or whatever to actually take over. Because then if I can now use Bitcoin and not be tracked by the government, I'm going to do that. So it could actually completely backfire, and it could be the thing that pushes people to go to an unregulated blockchain to do the transactions that they want to do. Because I think that is what will happen. I think they will go, you know what? I'm sorry, Tom, you drove out to the lake house this week, and your carbon footprint says that you had 2 tanks of gas. You're only allowed 1 tank of gas because the carbon footprint is too much for you to have 2 properties, and no more gas for you. That's what will happen. And I mean, this is really going tinfoil. Maybe, and this could be a good thing. Actually,
sorry,
maybe,
Tom.
Maybe Steve pretends he's like not conspiracy.
I didn't want to be controversial, so I wrote a series of questions to ask Steve today.
I just think like there is a point where that can be done with food. Yeah. Right. Sorry, too much McDonald's this week.
The question's, where does it stop?
Yeah, that'd probably be helpful for me, actually.
That would be. So here's the thing. Think about all of the health benefits that the Canadian government can do for you. We can take the fork out of your mouth, right? Like,
it's a good marketing pitch.
It is not something that I want to see. And I am generally of the mindset that people that believe in conspiracy theories are absolute lunatics. And I do believe that. But this is something where I can just go, look, giving the government ultimate power over exactly where your money is and what you can spend it on is probably not a good idea.
Yeah. So we're bullish on Bitcoin, Ethereum.
You know what? I just thought that out loud right now, but I might go buy.
I know it seemed really smart when you said it. So
well, let's clip that and make it a short on the channel there, Tom.
Steve says most things with confidence, which comes off as if he knows what he's talking about, but we're never quite sure here. That was a fun episode, and we wrapped it up nicely there, going down the rabbit hole. Mike, if someone is watching or listening and wants to connect with you or your team or talk about digital currency, where do they go?
Mike at thekernsgroup.ca, or our website is thekernsgroup.ca. And then, like every other guest that's failed on this, we're on Instagram under maybe at the Kearns Group. That sounds like something I would pick for Instagram.
Steve, Mike doesn't post often, but when he does, his reels do like 25,000 views, and he absolutely crushes me. He's like this secret Instagram guru that won't tell me how he's doing it.
Yeah.
It's very good. He's basically doing what we do with the YouTube videos, but turning into 45 seconds and hitting with the hook on RBC said this thing, and then it just takes off. It's amazing.
Yeah. the key is to do it with severe inconsistency. So I like to go.
I should be crushing on it.
Yeah,
on Instagram.
yeah. No, I tend to go really hard for 30 days in February, and then we'll see you next February.
That was fun.
I should do that same thing with my YouTube channel right now.
Yeah,
that was fun.
If you want to take this offline, I can give you a few tips.
Mike, I'd love if you did start up your podcast again in all seriousness, because the episodes you put out, maybe it was last February, were pretty darn good. And I'd like to see that come back at some point as well. On behalf of Steve, Mike, and myself, I want to thank everyone for watching and listening this week to the Tom Storey Show. If you haven't already, make sure to like this video if you made it to the very, very end, and let us know in the comments if you made it to the end. We'd love to know. Also, subscribe to the channel and those audio reviews on Apple Podcasts. Is that what you want me to say, Steve?
I'm going to make a review today.
Make a review, because I saw Ravi, friend of ours, put a nice review up, so we should probably read that. But I want to say, as my final thought, this week was great. Next week, you are going to want to listen to this entire week. Next week has
way to make Mike feel like
way to take away like I'm coming feeling pretty good after that episode.
This is going to be the most views ever.
Yeah,
but nobody's
going to Kelleher on again next week.
No, we do not next week.
But I'm telling you, next week is one that you know what though? Whenever I say that, like, here's a super like influential person in the real estate business. Like, nobody on YouTube cares who that is. So like, you know, they don't.
Yeah,
maybe it won't do that
next week. This episode, though, it will be titled something to do with the housing correction being over, and this will do very well on views. I can guarantee that. But yeah, next week, most influential person in Canadian real estate as voted upon by their peers. Going to be a fun episode, Mike. I'm sure you know who we're talking about. Everyone, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. This one was a little bit longer, but I hope you enjoyed it. Have an amazing day, and we will see you next Sunday. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Mike. That was awesome, man.
All right, one sec.